Hey there again, YouTube. Here is part 2 of my work with me video for the WaLoli Catgirl Kimono. Here I'm making the inner layer of the kimono, the obi or belt, and the ears and tail. Unfortunately, I didn't record the making of the shoes, and the socks were made for another outfit. And the underwear was bought from Doll Heart. But please enjoy anyway. Starting where we left off, finishing up the outer layer and putting it on the doll, just to look pretty while we work on the inner layer. The inner layer doesn't have sleeve pieces in the patterns to make less bulk, and it would be very difficult to put on. So as before, I pinned the back of the bodice pieces together and sew them. And naturally I pressed the seams as well. Then I pinned the front peplums as well, just to save time. I'm doing this in a different order because no specific reason. Mainly because I felt that it would go faster, and if I messed up nobody would really see it, since it's the inner layer. And then I pinned the two back pins together to save time as well, so I can sew them on all in one go. After pressing the seams, I pin the back peplum to the back of the bodice. And then I put the collar on. This time I was lazy and I didn't iron the collar flat before adding it. And I started adding it from one side instead of the middle, which I'm probably going to regret. And then I sew it. And once again, since my collar ended up being a bit too wide, I folded it in half and I'll sew it again. And actually seal the corners that I turned. Now I use the guide I made on the pattern of where the sleeve should go closed to determine where I'm going to sew the sides of my outfit. And naturally I pin the sides and make sure the seams line up. What I didn't do, and what you can do, is fold over the armholes and sew them in place. But since my fabric has been sealed and nobody's going to see it, I'd left it like that. And turn it right sides out, and we've got our basic inner layer. Next, I'm going to take another ribbon and I'm going to add some pleats. And just like the ruffles, I use the 3 times the amount I want to cover. Unfortunately, I didn't show all the entire process of making the ruffles, because I did it off camera. And naturally I have to seal the edges. I fold over one side and then fold over the other side in a Z, basically a Z pattern. And here's the finished. I sew it in place before I put it on the dress. Well, the inner layer of the kimono. I tried on the doll to check if the clothes cover enough. And since we mentioned it before in the previous part that it looked a bit short, and I'm using a fabric scrap to temporarily act as the obi to see how it looks. At this point I hadn't decided on the color of the obi, so I was testing out some stuff. Now I've sewn on the ribbon. Now I'll get out. At this point I decided to use yellow for my obi. Coincidentally I had yellow ribbon, just the right thickness. I cut 2 pieces to make it thicker or more sturdy, and sealed the edges with fabric glue. Then for the decoration piece, I had a bit of trouble looking for the right colors because I wanted to use red, but I didn't have a wide enough red. And I used very thin strip of yellow ribbon along the edge of the collar. So I found a thinner red and decided I would sew 3 pieces of the thinner red to make the width for the obi decoration. Naturally, I sealed the edges with fabric glue. Here you can see me pinning a fine ribbon to the collar to add a little detail. I sewed the 2 yellow ribbon pieces together and the 3 pieces of red. I decided to attach the obi with a snap. In the first part of the snap, for me usually the flat one, I sew first. Sorry that it's not quite on camera. In general, when I sew snaps or hooks and eyes or such things, I go around 3 times everywhere. So after the first snap is sewn, I put it on the doll and check where I want the second snap. And the snap is the one with the pin side which snaps into the other part. I put it that it goes towards the doll so that you just have to push it in. But on checking it on the doll, I found out that I sewed one of the snaps skew. So I'm removing it and going to resew it. And then I check it. Sorry that you can't see again. Now for the red piece, I fold it like a concertina shape and I iron it so it makes a natural shape. And I tie it with my fine red ribbon in the middle and I sew it onto the obi. I could have sewn the red ribbon also onto the obi, but then I can't tie new and different styles of tying ribbons. Not that I'm very creative with that. And next part. I'm starting with a tail. I have a twisted piece of wire, the length I want my tail, and a small rubber tube. I put the wire into the tube so that I can have my flexible tail. And I bend the wire so that I can hook it onto the underwear. So, very sorry for this part, that it's difficult to see, but I was sitting watching videos while doing this. And after that, I wrap the rubber tube in a piece of fabric and glue that shut. I use the fast grab glue so that I don't have to wait. Since the glue is struggling to come out and the glue tube is made of metal, I use some pliers to help squeeze the glue out. Now I take the doll and test the tail on the other underwear to check the length and cut off the excess, and then I seal the edge of the fabric. So the fabric is a little bit longer than my wire and my rubber tube. Now I take another wire and measure it on the head of my doll, so I can make a headband for the ears. I twist the edges of the wire so it doesn't damage the resin. Then I take some cardboard and draw out more or less the ears I want and cut it out. I cut out 2 pieces for the 2 ears, and I fold them in half to make a more accurate ear shape. Now I'm putting the headband on the doll, or the wire, and measuring where the ears should go, and then I'm gluing them in place. Unfortunately, we didn't get that on this footage. So after it's glued in place and secured with enough glue, I bring out my paint. I painted the ears with 2 coats of white acrylic paint, and then later sealed them with some Mod Podge. And I made some yarn wefts, some very light pink, some light pink mixed with white and a lot of white. What you're seeing currently isn't all of them, but I find this process very tedious. I know a lot of doll artists enjoy making yarn wefts, brushing out the yarn, straightening it, but it's not for me. So I start with the very light pink at the tip of the tail and glue it around the tail piece by piece. When making the yarn wefts, I cut out a piece of cardboard, more or less the length I want the wefts to be, and wrap the yarn around the cardboard. And then I cut it and I tie it to a piece of wire or a piece of wood or a chopstick. And then I brush it out with a cat brush, pet brush. After that I straighten it. So nothing new from what people normally use. After I straightened it, I cut it and put some fabric glue, or in this case that clear glue I've been using, and I put it, a little bit of that on a clear file or a sheet of plastic, and then I work the glue into the yarn I cut off. So nothing new, and I'm sure a lot of doll artists can explain it a lot better. Here you can see me gluing the wefts or the cut yarn onto the paper. I use a toothpick to smoosh the yarn into the glue. And just to make sure, I use a comb to brush out some of the yarn, just to keep it neat. I tend to make the yarn wefts as I go, because I don't have the patience to make a whole bunch in one sitting. Later, just how I glued the yarn to the tail, I glue the yarn to the ears. White on the outside of the ears and pink on the inside. And after I've glued them and made sure the base is thick with yarn wefts and the glue is sturdy, I trim the yarn on the ears. I then trim the yarn on the tail so that it can be nice and fluffy. If you wanted to make a foxtail instead of a cat tail, you'll have to use a lot more yarn wefts than I did on the tail, and a lot longer as well. So here's the final look. Well, thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you'll come back again next time and that everyone had a good time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.